I'm a victim too. And that was really, really hard to kind of swallow in that moment. So the other thing that happened in that first week is that we were in touch with the Canadian consulate. And through the Canadian consulate, we were able to speak with the coroner that was representing Canada. So he was representing all of the Canadian victims. And although Arron was technically British, he had grown up in Canada, which is where we met. In fact, somebody asked me how we met, and we met at a party when I was like 20 years old. He was 24 in Toronto. We met in Toronto. So we had this conversation with this man who kind of turned out to be quite instrumental because, as I said, through this whole process, I'd been really pragmatic. So he was able to kind of walk me through what probably happened, that, you know, they'd all been moved into this corner office that was deemed fireproof, but that they were probably all overcome by smoke long before the building had fallen. It was also through him that I began to understand about sort of, you know, the DNA and the DNA requirements that we're going to need to have. And that's why I was able to hand Arron's toothbrush in to the police as part of his missing person report. The ending of this story is that we all piled back into the car after this episode. And I think we must have rented a limousine or something, because I remember we were all in this car and driving back along the highway, and over every overpass were people with flags, waving flags. And it was when it also started with the signs, "We will never forget." And I remember just being like, you know, like just so choked up as we went under every underpass, thinking, oh my God, like this thing is huge. You know, it was sort of the first time I kind of had a sense of the scale. Like it still hadn't sunk in because I was so ensconced in my own little world. And we got to our street, and as we're driving along the street, somebody had tied on every tree a red, white, and blue ribbon. And so we drove down, and all the trees were ribboned, and I knew it was for me. And that was huge and overwhelming as well. Okay, more next week.